What's up guys, Nico back at you with another video on the channel. And my last video was the Intel i9-10900K versus the Ryzen 9 3900X. It got really good views. It got about 80 views at the time of recording, so I thought why not make another video. But this time it's going to be the Ryzen 3 versus the i3 because this is, more of a budget focused option, and I'm guessing many people will get this over the Ryzen 9. So we're going to be following the same video format as the last video. We're going to be taking a look at the specs, then we're going to be looking at some benchmarks, and then we'll come to the conclusion. So let's begin. Okay guys, so starting with the spec overview, we're going to start by looking at the i3-10100 from Intel. It's got 4 cores, 8 threads, so multi-threading is supported, base clock of 3.6 GHz and race clock of 4.3 GHz. It is locked, so you cannot overclock it. An L3 cache of 6 MB. Rated TDP is 65 watts. It ships with an Intel stock cooler, and this cooler is good enough to keep up with the temperatures of this processor. The architecture is the Comet Lake 14 nanometer, unlike AMD, which is the 7 nanometer architecture. And this processor was released on Q2 of 2020, along with the other 10th gen processors, and the price is about $120. Okay, looking at its competitor, it is the Ryzen 3 3300X from AMD. It's got 4 cores and 8 threads, just like the Intel chip. Its base clock is 3.8 GHz, so slightly better base clock, and the boost clock is 4.3 GHz. Now this chip is unlocked for overclocking, so you can push that boundary further if you get a good cooler. The L3 cache is almost bumped up by 10 MB. It's 16 MB of L3 cache. The rated TDP is still 65 watts, just like the Intel processor, and the cooler is the Wraith Stealth cooler. Again, this cooler is way better than the Intel stock cooler, and you can also do some slight overclocking with the 3300X even with this Wraith Stealth cooler. The architecture, as I told you, was the TSMC 7 nanometer FinFET, and unlike the other Ryzen 3rd gen processors, this release was fairly recent, releasing almost a year after the other processors. It was released in Q2 of 2020, and the reason I decided to make this video is because of the price of the Ryzen 3 3300X and the Intel i3-10100. Both of these are priced at $120, so I thought it would be an apples to apples comparison. So people have been comparing this Ryzen 3 3300X to the i7-7700K for a long time because of the same 4 cores and 8 threads it's got. Now, as far as I've seen, all the people which have compared these two processors, the Ryzen 3 3300X is basically better than the i7-7700K at every single aspect, be it gaming or productivity. That clearly shows how good AMD is. Even used i7-7700Ks cost over $200 to $250 on eBay, so you're essentially getting a processor that's better than a flagship processor 2 years ago for $120. So AMD's really stepping up the competition. Okay, so the point of this video was to discuss the i3-10100 versus the Ryzen 3 3300X. So let's dive into the benchmarks.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Okay, guys, so as you saw with the benchmarks, clearly AMD was winning. Okay, first let's talk about the productivity benchmarks. And Ryzen was clearly pulling ahead of Intel in every single aspect. And as we all expected, Intel should have done better in single core, but now Intel just lost to Ryzen even in single core. So basically, Ryzen is crushing Intel in performance, whether it be single core or multi core. And with these range of tests that I did, clearly AMD is the winner. Now let's talk about gaming. And gaming, again, Intel should be the winner here, but Intel was, lagging behind by like 2-3 FPS. And I really wouldn't consider that a difference, so I'm just going to give it as a tie, but clearly AMD is matching Intel's gaming performance. So really nice processor. And I also did a couple of benchmarks comparing the Ryzen 3 3300X and the i7 7700K. But I didn't show it on this video, but I did do some benchmarks, and the Ryzen 3 3300X was almost 3% faster than the i7 7700K, whether it be gaming or productivity benchmarks. So, would you believe that a $120 CPU is beating a 2-year-old flagship? So, yeah. Okay, now let's talk about the conclusion. I wouldn't recommend going for Intel at all. Whether you're gaming, you're doing some productivity stuff, I would not recommend Intel for any of those because the i3 is just terrible value. And I wouldn't say it's terrible value, but it clearly doesn't match the performance of the Ryzen 3 3300X, and it's priced the same as the 3300X. So obviously the obvious choice would be to go for the Ryzen 3 3300X. Now let's look at my own opinion. Which processor would I go for? And again, I'm going for AMD. It's a no-brainer. You're getting more performance for the same price, and I really value the price to performance ratio, and yeah, I would definitely pick AMD over Intel, and another clear win for AMD here. So that's it for this video, guys. A lot of time went into making this, so please hit the like button and smash that subscribe button along with the notification bell so you can get an instant notification when I upload again. Please, guys, subscribe, and as you can see, I have found out that 99% of you who are watching haven't subscribed, so please subscribe to the channel as it really helps me grow. And until the next video, it's Nikhil signing off from Nikhil Talks Tech. Peace.